2. Why does it have to be called that? Perfect. Okay. Hello and welcome to episode 1 of the Juha Juppi podcast. No, that is not a stage name. In today's podcast, we're going to be talking about what do you do if you have tight or weak wrists? Will your biceps grow by doing pull-ups? And am I even able to become more flexible and more mobile? And so for today's questions, I have them pulled from Reddit and I have them right in front of me. So without further ado, let's start. All right, that was kind of a joke. Wait, what? How do I stop that? Oh, whatever. That's funny. No, I don't know exactly if I'm supposed to have intro music, but I just wanted to put that in there just for fun. So no, so let's actually start this today. Once again, my name is Juha Juppi. This is my first podcast that I've done, so I'm expecting that there are going to be some bumps and bruises along the road, but I'm going to try my best to provide some value for you guys, some free value for you guys. So question one comes from Reddit. I don't know exactly if I'm supposed to be crediting the people that actually post this, but I went on Reddit and I went to the bodyweight fitness subreddit, and this particular post has 2.5 thousand thumbs up and 114 comments, so it's clearly a popular comment. So I think that's worth talking about. First, I'd like to kick off with some hot chocolate from Ice Holes. No, it's actually really good. Okay, so the title of the article is Tight and weak wrists are a common limiting factor with bodyweight exercises, but incorporate these 2 active mobility exercises that require no equipment, and they will be stronger and more flexible than ever. Okay? And then, it talks about a couple other things, whether it's for push-ups, handstands, planche, yoga, or other endless endeavors we have aspirations for. Spend enough time on your hands and you'll eventually experience your wrists being a limiting factor in your training. And okay, so actually before I read that actually is kind of point number 1. So the answers that I give are coming from the perspective of the functional range systems that I can put a graphic on the on this screen, but the functional range systems are used by a bunch of professional sports teams, baseball, basketball, football, maybe UFC. So they're going to be coming from the perspective of this system and its way of thinking. So it said that if you spend enough time doing something, eventually you're going to experience pain in your wrists. Well, that kind of is one of the big differences between the functional range systems and other things. A lot of systems are based upon trying to acquire the skill, and something that is worth asking yourself is, rather than spending 100% of your time trying to acquire the skill, why don't you try and acquire the prerequisite movement that you need for the skill? So for example, if you want to do a push-up, but you can't actively extend your wrist 90 degrees, then you don't have the prerequisite wrist mobility to do a push-up. And if you ignore that, and if you go on YouTube or you follow some random progression on how to do a handstand in 3 steps, once again, these steps may be great for acquiring the skill, but it may not be the best at acquiring the prerequisite mobility. And the same goes with a lot of other systems, or like a lot of other approaches to acquiring a talent. There are people that focus a lot of time on teaching you how to squat with a certain amount of plates on each side. Hey, let's have you bench 2 plates, squat 3 plates, and deadlift 4 plates. But if you're going to squat, do you have the prerequisite mobility in your ankles and your knees and your hips? So anyways, that was just a side note. So I agree. If you do not train to have prerequisite mobility for the activities that you do, yeah, then you are going to experience a limiting factor in your training. The post continues by saying, they aren't used to dealing with heavy loads, but the good news is they can be built up toward it. And well, yeah, they're not used to it if you don't train it. That's not a bad thing, it's just, it is what it is. If you don't do it, then you shouldn't expect your body to be able to handle it. And then it has basically 2 videos, a palm pulse progression and a back of hand wrist push-up progression. And by the way, it's not my position to, or I'm not here to say that this person is wrong, that this person is putting out bad information, because from the looks of it, this individual actually is very active in the bodyweight, in the Reddit/bodyweight fitness community. It seems like the tips that he's given have been very well respected. People really like the things that he gives out. So it's not my position to say that what he's saying is wrong. However, what I am trying to do here is just be another voice and give you a different perspective. Rather than saying, this person is telling me to do 2 exercises without knowing the health of my wrist, isn't there value in thinking about it in terms of, is my wrist ready for these 2 exercises? Because, once again, this is a quote, I'm going to slightly butcher it, from Dr. Andre Ospina, but he says often that there's no such thing as a bad exercise, just a person ill-prepared for such exercise. So everything that he says in this video may end up being quite well and very effective, but is it good for you right now? Are you just coming off of spraining your wrist 2 times in 3 months because of wrestling? Did you have like a bike accident and you had to have surgery on your right wrist, but your left wrist is trying to compensate? Like where are you coming from? Are you a high school basketball athlete that is very active and your wrists are excellent? Are you a gymnast and you can bend your wrist so far? So depending on where you are on the spectrum of wrist mobility, that kind of will dictate if these exercises are actually the most appropriate for you right now. So if we go through this, how to strengthen wrists for push-ups, handstand, planche, gymnastics, yoga, no equipment needed. And I think actually the ideology behind this video is actually great. He's trying to help. He clearly has an ability to teach people, because this video has over 30,000 views and a bunch of likes. Very well respected. But one of the things that he does in this video is he talks about if you want to strengthen your wrists, then you can do palm pulse progressions. And he wants you to kind of get into this bird dog position with your palms down on the ground, and with your fingers, push your fingers up off of the ground and slowly let your palm lower until it touches the ground and pulse up and down. Which, that may very well work for some people. But what I want to tell you is, rather than saying, hey, I'll try this random progression, if your wrists are actually weak, if you actually aren't able, let's just say, for example, if you aren't able to extend your wrists 90 degrees actively, we have to look at, it's worth asking yourself, why can't you do that? Not, hey, let's do this random exercise, but why can't my wrist do that? So it's worth it for this. So obviously, if there are injuries that you're dealing with, it'll be worth it to go seek a professional. I'm not telling you that you have to do this stuff. This is not medical advice, but more just trying to stimulate you to think in a certain way. But like, for example, if your goal partially for this, if your goal is to do a push-up or a handstand, at the bare minimum, your wrists should be able to fully extend 90 degrees, and very likely even more than that. But if they can't do that, why don't you just run a simple test and take one hand, say you want to assess your left wrist, well, point your left wrist straight with your fingers pointing towards the ceiling. Take your opposite hand and put your palm against those fingers and just see how far back you can actually bend that wrist. Can you bend it 45 degrees? Can you bend it 95 degrees? How far can you bend it? And is there any pain? If you are bending your wrist back into extension and you feel pain on the closing angle side, if you feel it where maybe like if you're wearing a watch, if you feel closing angle pain, then you're probably not ready to be doing this right now. If you're pushing yourself into that extension and you feel some pain near your wrist, near like the front part, the opening angle joint, if you feel pain there, well then once again, you're also not ready for that. If there's opening angle joint pain, then it's worth it to go see a professional about that. But for the podcast, let's just assume that you don't feel pain right now. What you can do is, I'll give you an example. Let's say that you can only put yourself through 45 degrees, but your goal is to double that because the prerequisite for doing push-ups and handstands is 90 degrees. So you need to accomplish 90 degrees before you move on to that activity, that handstand. Well, what you can do is you can even go into a bird dog position and straighten your arms, put your palms towards the floor so they're touching, and your like the inside of your elbow is facing away from you, and just simply bend and sit back a little bit, just a little bit, until you feel a stretch on the front of your forearm. And what you can do there is, rather than taking you through a progression like in this video that is focusing on concentric and eccentric, we're going to focus on a muscular contraction that is very, very easy on your body to handle. We're going to do something isometric. We're going to do some pails and rails. So what you can do is, in that position, when you're on your hands and your knees and your arms are straight out, your palms are touching the ground, you're sitting back until you feel a stretch. You can just sit back there for, say, 2 minutes, just hang out, feel the stretch, and then for a 10-second contraction, while your palm is still on the ground, push your palm into the ground for 10 seconds. After that, change the direction, and for 10 seconds, try and pull your palm off of the ground. It is completely not going to lift off of the ground, but that's what I want you to think about. And what that's going to do is, spending that 10-second push and that 10-second pull after stretching for a few minutes in that position, that's going to work to strengthen our tissues at short and long ranges, which, if we're trying to become more flexible, then we have to push our end ranges of rotation. So you can do that. So so for 2 minutes, you just hold a stretch. For 10 seconds, push, 10 seconds, pull. Repeat that 3 times. So push, pull, push, pull, push, pull. And after that, hang out for another 30 seconds or a minute. Just allow yourself to sit back into that position and try not to contract or push or pull or anything. Just hang out in this newly acquired range of motion and come out of it slowly. I will repeat that. Come out of it slowly. And afterwards, you may notice that you have a bit more range of motion temporarily. And what does that mean? Great, that is step 1. That is like our first mini session in increasing wrist extension. So if your goal is to have a better handstand position and you have to increase your wrist extension, continue doing that exercise that I just talked to you about, the Pales Rails one. Continue to do that. Do that once a day. Do it as often as you can. Do it 10 times a day if you can. You may be able to now do it 3 times a day. The frequency is not, trying to do it a magic number of times per day, like 3 times per day is not the magic number. Twice per day is not the magic number. 9 times per day is not the magic number. What is the magic number is as often as you can do it. Because the frequency that is required for, say, a child to see results is much lower than the frequency that is required for, say, a middle-aged office worker who hasn't seriously exercised in 15 years, but they want to take a CrossFit class, or they want to just do a certain home exercise routine that requires them to do a lot of push-ups. Those 2 people require very different frequencies, so there's no magic number for everybody. Just how often can you do it? Do it as often as you can. So I won't talk about this more. There's definitely great information in this article. If you want to go check out that article, by all means. But what I'm just trying to provide is a different outlook, a different way on looking at things that you may have experienced. So next one, I also found from Reddit on the r/fitness page. This has 8.3 thousand thumbs up? No. 8.3 thousand upvotes. Gosh, I knew that. And this was uploaded a year ago. It has, how many comments does this have? 330 comments. Yeah, so it's clearly a popular topic that people want an answer to. Will my biceps grow from doing pull-ups? I do mostly preacher curls and 21s for my biceps, but I wanted to add another accessory lift. Will pull-ups help grow my biceps, or is there another more beneficial exercise? Edit, and then, okay. Thanks for the serious answer. I'll incorporate chin-ups and see if that works. Won't stop doing workouts either. Okay. Will biceps help your... There you go. Will biceps grow from doing pull-ups? That all depends on your lifting age. I don't know if you've heard that term before, but let's say you're 25 years old and you've been working out for 1 year. Well, then your training age is 1 year. But really the important part is if I don't know your training age, and it's really hard to say, because if you're a beginner and you want your biceps to grow, doing almost anything is going to make everything grow. If you've never worked out a day in your life and you start doing squats, push-ups, and planks, your whole body is going to get stronger just because it's adapting from a basis of not much, and you're building upon that. But if you're curious if it's going to grow from that, that also depends on time under tension. If you want a certain muscle to grow, whether it's the biceps or your hamstrings or your lats, a really big, important thing to focus on really is time under tension. And what does that mean? That might mean doing sets of between 8 reps to 12, 8 to 12 reps. Each rep, you might probably want to have it last 3 to 5 seconds. And depending on the exercise or depending on what type of workout you're doing, you might want to do 3 to 5 sets. So an example of this is if you want your biceps to grow, let's say hypothetically 15 pounds for doing biceps is adequate for you. An example of something that could work for you is doing 15-pound bicep curl for 12 reps, and each repetition lasts for about 5 seconds, so 2.5 seconds up, 2.5 seconds down, and then you do that for 4 sets. Will they grow from doing pull-ups? That depends on the time under tension that you're using for the pull-up. If you're doing something like a kipping pull-up and you're trying to use your whole body for it, the amount that your biceps will grow will probably be a little bit more minimal because you're focusing on a lot more than just your arms for that. If you're doing a lot of descending pull-ups, if you're focusing on a lot of eccentrics, even if you weren't doing the up phase, if you were just holding yourself on the top phase, on the top part of that pull-up, and you were just slowly letting yourself down, that would be a lot of time under tension, that would be a lot of eccentrics, and that would grow your biceps. Is it going to be the greatest for you in terms of athletic performance? What sport are you doing? That's hard to say, but this question just wanted to know about bicep curls. Yeah. And then the last question that we'll talk about today is also from Reddit, and this one came from the r/flexibility subreddit. This has 104 upvotes, 8 comments. So people at least wanted to hear about this. Is my body just unable to become flexible or not bend in certain ways? I feel like a Barbie who can only move their limbs in 2 directions. And that's something I wanted to address because although this question goes on to list very specific information about this person that may not apply to you, this person is a 21-year-old ballet instructor? Yeah, instructor. Anyway, so people in here are very likely not a group of 21-year-old ballet instructors, so I want to at least slightly change this to how this could apply to everybody. So how do you know if your body is just unable to become flexible or not bend in certain ways? Well, you really have to... So once again, there are some obvious answers, like have you sustained a particular injury a long time ago that you just never addressed? For example, maybe you sprained your wrist 5 years ago and you never did the appropriate rehab, so ever since then your ankle has been progressively worse. Did you do gymnastics as a kid from the ages of 8 to 13, but then from the ages of 13 to 35 you didn't do any exercise, and now you've lost all of the things that you gained from that? So again, it kind of depends. I guess one of the simplest ways to figure it out is just, to either get an assessment done, but I think it might even be worth it to just search on Google or to search on YouTube for finding a Kinstretch class. So there is a class called Kinstretch, and it's hard to explain exactly what the class is called. I think some people have jokingly said it's like not your mom's yoga class. It's kind of like a yoga class for badasses, kind of. So that's kind of like that. It falls under the functional range systems. There's a lot of functional range conditioning, programming, things that you can do for stuff you do in the gym, but then there's like a subset of that, Kinstretch, where if you were to search on Google, where's a local Kinstretch class, you could always go to a gym and try a couple Kinstretch classes, or just even search on YouTube for a free Kinstretch class. There are a lot of really brilliant people that just upload full workouts for free. Half an hour videos, 1 hour videos. I know there are some people that have like email lists, and I've gotten emails from those people where they just give out a free 15-minute shoulder stretching workout, or a free 25-minute video where they just work on flexibility and mobility in our hips. So there are a lot of free resources. So if you're not sure where to start for that, just even search on YouTube Kinstretch free, or like Kinstretch class. And if you wanted to just try that out, that could be a very quick way to simply go through the things and see what would help. But how to tell? I really like to give people the benefit of the doubt when it comes to answering if people are more flexible, or if people have the ability to become more flexible. I'm always going to assume yes more often than I would assume no, only because the type of world that the average person lives in, we sleep for 5 to 8 hours a day, not moving. We go and we sit in a car for half an hour. We go to an office. We sit for 8 hours. We go back in our car for another half an hour to drive home. And then we sit on the couch for another couple hours and watch TV. If your lifestyle is that, then there's a lot of flexibility and overall general health, but there's a lot of flexibility and mobility that there's a lot of range of motion that we're losing simply from that lifestyle. So if you were to change that lifestyle, I'm sure you could very well see changes. Like, having a sedentary lifestyle does not mean that there's a 0% chance, oh, nope, you're screwed. Like, that's not really how it works. It's not like, oh, because you have an office job, because you work at a desk, nope, nothing you can do about it. Just, you might as well shoot yourself now, because nothing you can do about it. No. If you want to do that, just try things. I know, just so I guess something actionable would be to search the Kinstretch one. Another thing to do is just maybe try like a full body cars routine. You could probably just even search online. Actually, let me search this on YouTube real quick and just see what are like the first things that come up. You can try a full body cars routine, controlled articular rotations, which looks like joint circles, but they can be very different than that. Full body cars routine, not cars painting. Yeah, so you could even search full body cars, K-A-R-S, but the car is capital and the S is lowercase, but on YouTube it'll still give you the same thing. Anyways, you can go through that. And what could be really great about this is if you go through and there are videos, the first one is 7 minutes, the second one is 26 minutes, 11 minutes, 10. So 1.5 minutes. There are a lot of free videos that have you testing your range of motion. So if you're curious, if you have the ability to be flexible, spend the next few weeks and actually work on your flexibility. So something that you could do. You could go to one of these videos and watch the video and go through it yourself, this total body cars routine. And what that's going to look like is they're going to be taking each joint through its full range of motion. You'll be going through your neck first, and they'll just go down the chain, neck, shoulders, scapula, thoracic spine, our hips, knees, ankles, tibia, toes, things like that. You could go through 9 or 10 different parts of your body and probably figure out which one feels the most stiff right now. And so for the average person, it's probably a safe bet to assume 3 things that'll be very stiff, 3 things that will not have a ton of flexibility is our shoulders going overhead, our hips, if we were to bring our hips kind of in this like playing like hacky sack position, like the movement when you're standing and you play hacky sack, so you have to like kick your foot in. If you bring your foot in and then you bring your foot out, going through that internal rotation and external rotation. For some people, that may feel very tight, getting into a 90-90 position. You can even search that on YouTube or Instagram. There are a ton of resources. So anyways, the three I would believe would be shoulders going into that overhead position would probably be problematic. It is for a lot of people. Hips going through also rotation, and also spine. If you go through that, very often people will ask you to try to move like each part of your spine to similar like a cat cow, or those like cat camel exercises where you might see it in yoga, but it's a bit more intentional. So anyways, you could go through that and say, hey, my three problem areas are A, this part in my shoulder, B, this part of my hips, and C, this part of my spine. And you could just work on it. You can say, hey, my shoulder doesn't have a lot of flexion, or my shoulder doesn't have a lot of internal rotation. You could just do the routine every day for a few weeks, and that would very likely help. It wouldn't be the end-all be-all, but that would help. I'm not trying to give a solution that will take you from A to Z immediately, because that doesn't exist. At the end of the day, I think one of the most important things that you can do for yourself is to, at the very least, increase your awareness in where your body is right now, because that's actually a really big deal for a lot of people. Somebody may say, I want to become more flexible, I want to be stronger, I want to run faster, I want to play with my kids without getting fatigued, but a lot of people that have fitness goals don't actually have a lot of body awareness, and that is something that's worth at least exploring. So if you want to do that, so the takeaway for that point is you could try a free Kinstretch class online, or go to one in person, search on YouTube, and do a full full body cars routine. I think that's something that you would probably enjoy. I think that you guys would get some value from that, because that could at least answer some questions if you have the option to become more flexible, because that gives you the answer, where am I lacking in range of motion? And then these classes will give you a free blueprint as to what are the next steps. Bam. Okay, so that actually really is the end of everything that I wanted to talk about mobility. Selfishly, I just want to talk about the Toronto Raptors for a few minutes, because so I'm in Toronto, born and raised in Toronto. We the North, no, we the champions. I just want to talk about man, the Raptors are in such a crazy position right now. I was looking at the Reddit, and if you can't tell, I have a potentially unhealthy obsession with Reddit. I just think Reddit is fantastic. I was looking at the Toronto Raptors page of that, and someone posted, the East is better than the West this year. And man, I don't really know if I agree with that, just because... I don't know if I completely agree with that, but it is crazy to see that a team like the Philadelphia 76ers is in 6th place right now at 20-10. I watch Raptors games exclusively. I watch, for the most part, every game. Sometimes I can only tune into like half of them. But anyways, how is Philadelphia doing worse than Indiana? Everybody had Philly and Milwaukee pegged for... they're immediately going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals. But how is Philly in 6th place? And Indiana, as far as I know, they still don't even have Victor Oladipo back. And they're 20-9. Raptors, wow, this is phenomenal that we're 20-8 right now. But this may or may not be a really tough stretch for us, because it feels like we're one injury away from being the Golden State Warriors. Like, the Golden State Warriors, they lost KD. Klay Thompson is out. Steph Curry is out. Draymond Green is kind of injured, kind of not playing all the time. So they basically and then all of their like other role players. Sean Livingston retired. Andre Iguodala left. Do they still have Kevon Looney? Anyways, Quinn Cook left. So anyways, like right now this year has at least for the Warriors, it's been D'Angelo Russell, sometimes Draymond Green, and a G League team. Man, the Raptors, I feel like, oh man, we have so many injuries. We're down right now, Siakam out indefinitely. I hate that word because it's just, they're not ready to give us an exact word. They're not ready to give us a timeline. We're out Siakam. And like we don't have a superstar because obviously Kawhi left, but like how are we going to win these next few games? Because we have 2 against Boston. Who's our next Toronto Raptors schedule? I know we have 2 against Boston, the one on Christmas and then the game after Christmas. Oh, yeah. Tomorrow we're facing Dallas. So we're supposed to beat Luka Doncic, Kristaps Porzingis. Oh, who else do they have on there? Do they have JJ Barea? No. They don't have JJ Redick. They don't have Kyle Korver. Oh, they have one of those like really, really good 3-point shooters though. Maybe it is JJ Barea. Anyways, how are we supposed to beat the Dallas Mavericks when we are short? It's just going to be tough. When we're short, our best player, Pascal Siakam. We don't have Norman Powell, who is playing the best basketball of his career. We don't have Marc Gasol, which the fans seem to have a love-hate relationship with. But we picked him up for last season for the championship, and we won the championship. So that's like the most important part. And who else are we out? Oh, I mean, Freddie. We don't really know if even Freddie is supposed to be playing right now. He's probably just pushing through because of all of the other injuries that's happening. But anyways, I'll end it on that note. Raptors are facing Dallas tomorrow. Definitely gonna watch that. Hoping that we can extend our winning streak. And outside of that, perfect. So that's everything that I wanted to talk about today, guys. Once again, my name is Juha Juppi. Thank you for tuning in to episode 1 of the Juha Juppi podcast, where my goal is to answer questions for you guys. And because I currently don't have questions being given to me, I am going out and I am finding questions that are generally related to mobility, how to increase flexibility, how to increase articular strength, and just move better as a human. And then also talk about the Raptors every once in a while, just because it's fun. Talk about some random stuff, just as I love myself some basketball. So anyways, that is it for me, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys very soon.